Welcome to the Facing Your Fears podcast, where we talk about facing the fears we encounter in education as teachers, students, administrators, and parents while finding our inner confidence to thrive. I'm your host, Amanda Alford, and today my guest is Eric Curts. Eric is from Ohio. He is the host of a brand new podcast called Control, Alt, Achieve. He is a Google innovator, a tech integration specialist, a speaker, and kind of known as kind of a Twitter celebrity with his blogs and his website. If you haven't been to his website, Control, Alt, Achieve, definitely check that out. You can follow Eric on Twitter. His handle is at Eric Curts, one word. And you can also subscribe to his newsletter where you can check out all of Eric's fabulous resources and all of his webinars and just all of the great blog posts that he is posting out. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, your new podcast is about a month old. It just came out. And again, it follows along with your blog post and your website, Control, Alt, Achieve. So, tell us a little bit about your podcast, where we can find it. So for those who are listening can also check out your podcast as well.
Well, absolutely. So certainly, you can get to it in Google, Play podcasts and Apple podcasts and all, just by searching for Control, Alt, Achieve. But if you go to the blog, I also do have a recent post I've done there about the podcast, and that has the convenient links there as well. And of course, the website is controlaltachieve.com. And so that'll get you to that site. And then I think it's still probably on the front page. It hasn't been that long ago that I put up that post that has all the details about the podcast. But basically, the idea behind the podcast is really to serve as a supplement to the blog. What I do with my blog is, for the most part, try to share fun, creative ways to use technology for student learning, creation, collaboration, things like that. So a lot of it's Google heavy, but in general, it's technology, but it's things you can turn around and use tomorrow. What's a fun way to take this tool? Like, oh, hey, here's Google Slides. Okay, it's a slideshow presentation tool. Yeah, but what else can we do with it? Oh, we can also make stop motion animation. We can also do online comic strips, and we can also do collaborative writing, and we can also do. And it's that idea of taking something we already have, because schools don't have a lot of money. It's like, okay, we've got these tools. We got the Google tools. They're free, and we have them. But it's not just. Google Docs isn't just a word processor, and Google Sheets isn't just a number cruncher. Google
Right.
Sheets is also for pixel art and for generating random writing prompts and for so many other things. And so that's what the blog's about. And I've been doing the blog now for a couple of years. I think I'm into my third year on it now, and I just thought, well, I like to get information a lot of different ways. I bet other people do too. I really like podcasts and I really like YouTube, and I get a lot from that. So what if, instead of just putting my posts as posts on my site, what if every time I put up a post, I also did, a podcast episode to go along with it? And so that's pretty much, you're getting the audio version of, I'm not just like reading the post. It's not like that. That'd be kind of cute and funny, but that's not what it is. It's definitely a distilled version. So I keep the podcast really short, like 10 minutes long. And I basically am just saying, hey, this is the latest post on the site, and here's what we talk about. And I dig into it a little bit, maybe share a couple of key points from it, something you can definitely take away. So it's not like, you could just listen to the podcast and still get what you need from it. But the point being, at the end, I'm like, and if you want more, this is, here's the address for this most recent post. You can head to the website and get all the links. It's like the post is the show notes, sort of like that. And then, the podcast is just an audio version of that post. And I also do a YouTube video upload at the same time. So when I'm recording the podcast, I'm recording a video that I then pull the audio out of to be the podcast, but then the video goes up on YouTube. So really, that was kind of my whole joke in my post I put up there, that if this goes well, I'm going to keep expanding into other methods of sharing my posts. Like I'm going to start doing puppet shows and interpretive dance. I think, what else did I say? Morse code. I was thinking of a bunch of different ones. So we're going to try to come up with a whole bunch of different ways to share it out. But whatever the case, that's what that podcast is about. And so, yeah, if that's how people like to consume stuff and it helps reach a few other people, fantastic.
Well, it sounds great because, like you said, you are really channeling what teachers are wanting to do, and that is reach all different levels of learning depending on who your audience is.
Yeah.
It's not just, who can, the ones who can read and like to read the blog posts. Like some of our students would prefer just to read it straight out of the book.
Sure.
You're getting the visual, you're getting the auditory, you're getting, if they want to watch as they do. So
right.
Really just creating an outlet for them to learn depending on how they're wanting to do it.
That's a good way of saying it. We're hitting all those different modalities. So, yeah.
And I'm definitely will be interested to see when you decide to do interpretive dance through.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Google Slides or something.
I would say kind of think of like Napoleon Dynamite, the end of that movie. I think it's going to look something like that probably.
Well, that sounds awesome. Like, Napoleon Dynamite. But it's I think it's a wonderful thing because, like what we were just talking about a little bit before, if people are on their way to work, say I have a 20-minute drive to work. So on my way to work, I can listen to one of your podcasts about a blog and say, you know what? I didn't have time to read the blog, but now I can listen to it on the podcast on the way to work. And then when I get to my classroom, if I feel like, being a little fearless and risk taking, I just go ahead and try it that day because I'd already listened to what you said on the way to work because I didn't have time to read it. Because a lot of times I feel teachers, once we get to our classrooms, we don't have time to sit down and read. We don't have time, checking email can be a struggle sometimes. So I think it's a fantastic way of getting those blog posts out there because like you said, we can listen to it, in the car, we can listen to it in our classrooms, we can just hit play on our computer and listen to it while we're trying to get ready in the morning and still be able to get that valid information while multitasking. So yeah, I like the idea.
Well, good. I'm glad.
So it's like you can start writing that down and be like, yes, we can do this and this and this. And I have a podcast of my podcast to prove that. So as always, I like to kind of ask what I call my whiteboard messages. And for those of you who are just tuning in, whiteboard messages are a fantastic way I have found to kind of reach all of my students because we all have those students who won't raise their hand. We always have students who don't like to participate because they're shy. And so I found that I would write a question up on my whiteboard and it would be something maybe such as, what's your favorite TV show? What's your favorite type of pizza? Have you ever been on vacation? Things like that. And I try to kind of set it up depending on the season. So, when we get ready for spring break, I'm like, if you could go on vacation anywhere, where would you go? And it's just a fun way to interact with my students, but to learn and build relationships with my students. Because that's really the foundation and the cornerstone of classroom management, I feel like, is if you have solid, strong relationships with your students and you build that respect, the classroom management comes so much easier. So off my soapbox there just a little bit and on to my questions. I like to ask two questions. And so the first one is, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Well, this one is easy. I mean, there's not even a competition. So it's Ben & Jerry's cinnamon bun ice cream. There's just nothing's even close to it. That stuff is insanely good. It is so amazing. I try to be healthy. I really, really do, and eat well and exercise and things like that. But I don't care. I will buy Ben & Jerry's cinnamon bun ice cream. It will be in my freezer. If anybody ever comes over, it's in there because it's something I will not deny myself. It's wonderful.
And I love cinnamons. And so I wrote that down. I was like, I'm going to try that flavor.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Because I've seen the Ben & Jerry's and usually I kind of stay away from those because, they got the good names. They've got the fun names and stuff like that. And so I'm always like, what is really in there? Like what? And so I just kind of being in the grocery store, being a mom, I've got an 8-year-old attached to me, like, Mom, let's get this, and Mom, let's get that. And again, I'm trying to be healthy. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not throwing all this processed food and all this sugary food in. And walking through the ice cream section with an 8-year-old is not a good path to take.
No.
And so then it's like, all right, vanilla, in, go, let's go. Because if not, I want to sit there and read all the different flavors. I want to see, and kind of get a little adventurous and trying new flavors. And I'm like, nope, not with her, because if I turn around, there'll be 10 boxes of like fudgesicles and ice cream cones and anything she can grab, being like, she stopped. Now's the time.
Well, you can't go wrong with Ben & Jerry's cinnamon bun ice cream. You will be fine.
I am going to try it. I am excited. I'm going to go home and tell my husband that tonight. So the second one is a little bit trickier, a little bit more, as you said, in depth, a little deeper. And that is, if you could, what would you tell your 13-year-old self?
Yeah, that is a tough question, because it can be very, very easy, fun answer, or that can be a really deep question. If it was something where if I had to keep it as simple as possible, it would be, buy a lot of Google and Apple stock, when you can, because this was 13. This was 36 years ago. So that was a long time ago that I was 13. So I would. I'd be like, or buy a bunch of domain names and squat on them, and if I had to keep it simple. But if I could, the problem is, any advice I give to my 13-year-old self, I don't think he would understand, because I can give the same advice to my 49-year-old self, and I know it, but it's different to live it. But if I could somehow not just say the words, but also convey the meaning, and he really got it, I think I would say what I end each of my podcasts with. So, you don't have to have like a catchphrase at the end of a podcast or something like that, but I kind of felt like I really should, have something kind of consistent. And I didn't want it just to be something, silly. So I kind of thought about it. And so I end every one of my podcasts with the phrase, be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. What I think is important about that is, certainly, we definitely need to be kind to each other. We just need to treat folks nice. And I don't think my 13-year-old self would have a problem with that. I was a nice kid. I definitely was kind to kids. But it's that second part that I think teenagers, 13-year-olds need to hear, and that's be kind to yourself. And that can mean a lot of stuff. But we're so hard on ourselves as kids, and we're trying to figure out, who we are, and we're trying to figure out, am I worth anything, and it's such a hard, difficult time to be able to tell myself, just be kind to yourself, love yourself, treat yourself well, take care of yourself, say yes to things, go on adventures, you're enough just as you are. Be kind to yourself. If I could not just give them the words, but if I could make 13-year-old Eric understand that, holy cow, that would have been about 36 years earlier than, I still haven't figured it out, but I'm trying. So, yeah.
I love it. And it's like, I think it's what I'm trying to tell not only my 13-year-old self, but all my 13-year-olds, all 100 plus 13-year-olds that I see every day. And that is, it'll be okay. Everything you're stressing about now will not be worrisome in 5 years. And the thing that I love to tell him, I told him a story today, and I'm always saying, put down the phone, put down the game controller, go outside and play. Just enjoy nature. Just go outside. Enjoy being outside. Put down the phone and look up, because you're going to miss something. And it's not going to be in that selfie. So, because they're always telling me, I like to tell them stories about my childhood and when I was their age. And they're like, you did so many cool things. I'm like, because we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have video games, and my dad made me go outside. Like, that's why. So I'm always telling them, go outside, play. Don't keep your head down. So that sounds great. I love the way we are starting this off. We're going to switch a little bit. And instead of some fabulous Ben & Jerry's that I'm now like just constantly thinking about, I'm not going to lie. It's like, wow, I'm just like, on this ice cream kick now.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I was like, you may start a new trend here. Let's go down the road of what your journey has been in education and kind of what your why is, because you're an instructional strategist now, but obviously that hasn't always been your job. You're a blogger, you're a speaker, but kind of what has been your journey through the education system, and what is your why? Kind of what's your passion?
Sure thing. Well, this is my 27th year in education. I am still a full-time employee of the public school system. Even though I do the blog and I do the speaking and I do those things, I still have my regular day job and in the public schools. I started off as a middle school math teacher. Again, 27 years ago, taught middle school math for 7 years and absolutely loved it. Could tell many, many wonderful stories about the fun we had with taking math and doing crazy creative things with it to, bring it to life for the kids. And the middle school age was, I loved it. I loved teaching 7th and 8th grade math. But at the same time, I was the building nerd. I was the building, computer guy. And this was, again, quite a while ago. And this was just when we were finally starting to get internet connectivity in our schools, and we were just starting to get computers rolling out. And so after 7 years of teaching, a position was created in our district for what's now basically called a tech coach. They called it a technology integration specialist, but a lot of places would call it like a tech coach or something like that. And that's what I moved into. I moved from teaching kids to teaching teachers. And it was a tough move. To walk out of the classroom and then, become a teacher of teachers, but I was still in the same district. And I did that then for another 14 years at that school district. And over that time, I picked up a few more hats, by the end, anything that had electricity attached to it, somehow I was involved in it, and did way more than just the tech integration stuff, which was good and bad. In the end, my true passion, my true love is the tech integration part, the training and the creativity, not so much running Cat5 cables through the ceiling, and doing things like that, which I ended up doing as well. So after 21 years in that particular school district, I moved to the county level, so the regional service center. So that's where I work now. So for the last 6 years, I've been doing basically the same job, the tech integration part of it, but now at like the regional level at the county office. So I serve about 35 school districts and provide training for them. I go to them, they come to me, I put things online. And so a lot of the stuff that I share on my blog, it's stuff that I'm developing for my local teachers, my local schools. They had a question, they had a need. And okay, well, if I'm going to put this together, I might as well share it with the rest of the world. I mean, if it benefits them, maybe it'll benefit other people. And then along the lines of that, for the last probably 20 of those years, I've always been really passionate about sharing. If there's something that I think is cool, all right, I'm going to go to a conference and I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to put it online. Even though my blog is only a couple of years old, it's just because I finally decided I had too many websites and I just put them all in one place. I mean, I've had some kind of website or websites for many, many, many years. Even though I'm doing the podcast now, I've done 2 podcasts before. And so I've always been about sharing. And I think that is such an important thing to just, if you've got something cool, if you come across something neat, tell other people about it. We're better together. Just put it out there, And so I'm really, really big about just putting everything out as a Creative Commons, totally free. Anybody that comes across any of my stuff, you are completely free to use it in any way you wish. The only thing I ever ask is don't charge for it, because I'm not charging for it, and have a link that gets back to where it came from. But change it, iterate it, and I did the silly little fun build a snowman activity a couple of years ago. That was such a fun Google Slides activity to teach kids how to copy and paste and drag and drop and write creatively. So many people have been, inspired by that and made, a build a turkey thing and a build a congressman thing recently and all kinds of stuff. It's like, well, that's awesome. I'm so glad they took that and ran with it. So, when it comes to what is my why, what is my passion, that really is what it is. It's all about finding creative ways to use the tools that we have right now to make learning engaging, fun, active, let kids create, work together, share what they've done. And for the most part, it's going to be free stuff. Now, I definitely do share some tools that might have like a paid version, but they have to have a free version. I mean, when I talk about whatever it might be, Read and Write for Google or Screencastify or Pear Deck or whatever, hey, if you love that tool and you want to support them and go buy their full version, please do, because they're awesome companies, but they provide something that is free. And so, that's what you're going to find on the site is going to be ways to take what we've already got and do something fun and creative with it so that kids can really learn and be engaged.
And I love the biggest thing is how freely you're willing to just share all of that, because we have other websites that you can go and you can get resources that other teachers have put their work into and put their thoughts into, and it costs money. And a lot of times we're teachers. We don't have a lot of the money to be paying. And I'm not saying necessarily that that's a bad thing, because I understand that teachers also trying to find a way to make a second income. But
yeah, sure.
I love how willing and freely you just share, and you have that just sharing attitude of, it takes a village. It takes a village to create a teacher and keep, the education system going. And I am always on your website. I'm always looking at your resources. I'm always looking at different ways. And I've even done you did a build a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween.
Yeah.
I did that with my 7th graders because it was, Halloween, and we finished up our activity, and I'm like, all right, let's build jack-o'-lanterns. And they all thought I was going to bring in pumpkins. I'm like, nope, Google Slides. And they're all like, what? And then they just thought that was the neatest thing. Like, even though they're 7th graders, they still had that childlike innocence to them, and they still had that.
And so many of these activities are scalable. I mean, you can, it's up to it's not a canned thing. It's like, okay, well, it's sure, but it's run with it. Do because they're going to surprise you. The kids are going to do stuff you weren't thinking of. I mean, I'll do a training on how to use one of those websites that cuts out the background of your picture, and then you can, superimpose yourself into Google Drawings, and I'll be sharing that with kids, and you turn around and they've put themselves in a World War I photo, and they've, figured out how to change their picture to grayscale so it fits in, and they're just running with it, like that's awesome, and so much of this stuff definitely can be scaled. And I do love to hear that the kids liked it, because I definitely do want to go on record and say I have nothing against anybody who wants to use like a Teachers Pay Teachers type website or something like that. That's totally fine. Everybody, find your own way and do what's right for you. So it's not in any way me saying that I'm against that. But for me, for what I've chosen to do, I know that I'm reaching so many more kids because there's no barrier to it. I'm sure I could take some of those cute, fun activities and put them on a site like that and charge for them. And that's awesome. That's wonderful. But, instead of reaching 1,000 kids, maybe now I've reached, tens of thousands who have got to go home and say, what'd you do in school today? And they get to say, I made something, I created something, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, and you'll find that they will be so much more willing to share, when you have the opportunity to do things. So like with the jack-o'-lanterns, we ended up having a jack-o'-lantern contest. Like we were wanting to put it up on the board, and we were they're like, the coolest and the scariest and the most creative. And it was just turning this simple activity of me like, all right, we've got 20 minutes. I'm going to have you do something because you get more skills using Google Slides.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they want to have contests and look at me and look what I can do. And they need that. They need that self-esteem. They need those self-confidence, because there is so much self-doubt, even in the little ones. I mean, even when you think of self-doubt, you think, oh, that's high school, that's middle school. And it's not. You got the littles, first graders, who are like, I can't. And so to be able to do these fabulous activities that you've created and just let them be creative and play and, not have a set cookie cutter, this is the right answer.
Right.
Just letting that creativity flow. I love that. Obviously, this is facing your fears. And, we've talked, there are fears in education. And I think, everybody sees the common fears differently. So what I see as a fear, other teachers are like, oh no, that doesn't faze me at all. This is what I'm seeing. So what would you say are some common fears that you are seeing in education? Like you said, you are working at the regional site, so you've got 35 different schools under you. So obviously you're getting to see a large number of students and faculty and administrators. So what would you say are some common fears that you are seeing in education today?
Well, again, I think we could go so many different ways with this. I'll go personal with it and say, fears that not only I've seen in education, but ones that I struggle with, ones that I see, because I think I can probably talk more, authentically, from that point of view. But I think it's one that I bet everybody can probably relate to. You don't have to be a tech integration person or a tech coach to relate to it. And it's the fear of not being able to stay up to date, stay relevant, to be able to have the skills in an ever changing technology world that we live in. And people say, well, Eric, that's what you do for a living, and people go to your site to see these things. You certainly don't feel that way. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. There are more things out there than we can ever know. It's just not possible. Things change so frequently. New tools come out so often. Updates occur all the time. There's always another podcast to listen to. There's always another, we're not helping the matter, are we? There's always another The message of this podcast is it's okay not to listen to every podcast. We'll get to that in a second. But there's always another Twitter chat. There's always another post in Facebook. And there is no end to it. I mean, you can go to Facebook, and it can be for all the right reasons. You can be like, no, these are my colleagues. These are people I'm learning from. And you can start scrolling, and there is no bottom. There is no bottom to Facebook. It will never stop scrolling, And so I think it's easy to feel inadequate. It's easy to feel I'm missing things. I don't know everything. I can't keep up with all the stuff. And then, as a person who produces content, those same fears and insecurities transfer over into that, because it's like, well, it's not like I think I was listening to a comedian recently who was saying it's not like being a singer or a band where you can make an album with some songs and people will let you sing that same song for the next 50 years because they like the song. But he was saying, well, as a comedian, I can't do that. I can't keep telling the same jokes. I have to make new things. Well, as a tech person, I can't just make a cool blog post and be like, that's it, I'm done. I got to make a new one and another new one and another new one because technology always changes. And so I think to kind of summarize that up, one of the fears that I think whether you are a new teacher who's uncomfortable with technology, or if you're somebody that this is your life and this is what I do for a career, we all can feel like, I don't know enough. I can't keep up. I can't produce enough. There's, too much stuff out there. And I guess when it comes to what do you do about that, you got to be kind of careful with the answer, because on one hand, I've had folks say, so Eric, how do you stay up to date on stuff? And I can go into a whole long spiel, and I won't do that right now. But yeah, I do. I've got methods in place. I've got things I use between using, Nuzzle to curate Twitter and using Feedly to pull in all the blogs that I subscribe to, and to use podcasts and to use Pocket to organize things and read them aloud to me later. Yeah, I do. I've got all of these systems in place to do that. And I've done that. I've sat with folks. I remember with a group of tech folks sometime in the last year, I can picture it sitting at the table, explaining to them how I consume all this. And then you see that deer in headlights look in their eyes that I go, there's a second part to this story. I can't stop at this point. I can't just tell you, here's how you can keep consuming and constantly staying on top of things. I also need to say, it's okay not to. It's okay not to know everything. It's okay to miss things and not be in that Twitter chat and to turn off your phone and walk away from it. And it's okay to not put a blog post up every, time you turn around. And so this has been something I've actually personally been working on over the last year. And anybody who's been to my blog, Control Alt Achieve, might have seen that there is a tab on the site that goes to a second blog I do, yes, called Eric the Rad. And if you go to Control Alt Achieve, you can just get to it there. It's a lot easier than trying to get the dashes and stuff all right with Eric the Rad. But the point of that site was for me to share things that weren't necessarily technology stuff. They're a little geeky, a little nerdy, but it's more of life stuff. And one of the things that really drove me to do that was trying to share some of these same things. And one of the posts I have on there is called Full Bleed. And it's about how, when you're doing, I used to be in the yearbook, when I was in high school, I worked on the yearbook and we did all the, put the pictures in place and all that kind of stuff. And you talk about full bleed, which is, that term when you have a picture that goes off the edge of the page or, to the very, edge of the page, there's no margin. And that's cool for design. That's not cool for life, though, that we need margin in our lives. We can't live full bleed because technology will consume you. It will never end if you let it. I mean, there's always another blog post, another Twitter post, there's always something else more there. But we need margin. We need a break. We need that buffer between us and, things that might go wrong in our life. We need some margin in there. And also margin isn't just there to protect you and give you a chance to decompress and to, have a little bit of extra time in your life when something's going to go wrong. And suddenly you're like, well, I don't have time to deal with that because I've got this and this and this. Well, no, we need to be able to deal with problems as they come up in life. But margin is also where good things happen. You think about the margin of a book and you think about, well, that's where you write in the little notes of how you got inspired or something that meant something to you. And that's true for life too. Margin is when you put the phone down, you walk away from it and you talk to a neighbor, or you go for a bike ride, or you go for a walk in the woods, or you, play a video game if that's what it helps you to unwind or whatever it is. It could still be technology, but you walk away from some of this crazy stuff and you try to connect with life. And who knows what you find there? It's hard to say. And so that's been kind of my journey is, the fear is I'm not going to be relevant. I'm not going to be up to date. I'm not going to, be the expert. And the answer is, well, here's some ways to definitely stay up to date. And here's some ways to improve. Yeah. But also it's okay not to. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to let others be experts and learn from them. You don't have to have the answer. You can maybe know somebody who has the answer. That's okay.
And I love that because as a Google trainer, I kind of feel the same way. I'm always, we get emails every day from Google. Here's the latest update on this. Here's the latest update on that. And, trying to stay up on that, but also being a classroom teacher. So trying to, be a teacher, but then when teachers come and ask me questions about, hey, Google person, as they like to tell me, how can I use this? Or, just yesterday I had a teacher come and we were talking about margins and she was trying to create a table in Google Docs and she had her margins all incorrect. She's like, what did I do? Fix it. I know you know how to fix it. And it took me a few seconds to think because I'm like, this isn't something that I do all the time. So I had to go back and be like, how do you do this? And, it took a little fumbling around and we got it fixed. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. But I did have that moment of panic where it's like, what if I don't know how to fix this?
Right.
She's counting on me because she thinks that I can answer everything that's Google education related. And even though I'll be the first one to tell you that I can't, but I mean, even just little tasks like that, where it's just one-on-one. But then to go with what you were saying with the margins in life, I'm a track coach. And today I had one of my sprinters out there, and we're trying to work on him coming out of blocks because it's new to him. He's never come out of blocks out of the 100. And I'm trying to explain it to him, and he's just not getting it. And it's just because he wasn't understanding the way I was explaining it. And after about 2 different times, I'm like, he needs somebody who can explain it in a different fashion. I am just not reaching him. And I didn't want him to get frustrated. And so I called over one of the assistant coaches, and I said, do you have experience coming out of blocks? He said, yeah. I was like, will you help my young sprinter over here? Yeah, no problem. And with 5 minutes, and he didn't get down and showed him. He just was talking him through and telling him. Within 5 minutes, he was doing exactly what we were hoping for him to do. And he was happy, and he was so excited. And it made me excited because he was like, well, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? And I'm like, well, I was trying to. He's like, well, why didn't you just do it? You're the coach. And I'm like, yes, but this coach has more experience than I have in this manner. And I was like, buddy, I go to all the coaches, and I'm always asking if something doesn't go right. I go and I ask other coaches, what can we do? What do I need to do? Or can you show my guy how to do this, because I am not effectively reaching him right now. And like you said, it's the margins, but it's in life, it's in our job. It's finding that balance.
Right. Absolutely.
And especially with technology, trying to tune out, unplug.
Mm-hmm.
That is a harsh thing. We just inducted our junior National Honor Society tonight, and it was fabulous to see all my students there, and they're dressed nicely. And I'm like, look, you guys own something besides basketball shorts. I am so proud of you right now, because they're in really nice clothes. And we just held out a bag, and we're like, all your cell phones go in this bag. You get them back after the ceremony. And they're like, what? We're like, oh yeah, no cell phones. You are going to be unplugged for the next 45 minutes. And afterwards, I'm like, one, you survived. Look, all of you survived not having your cell phones, but they were attentive. They listened. They were so much more into what our speakers were saying and what was happening, because they were looking up. And I tried to convey that. I'm like, I'm really proud of you guys, because you paid attention to what was going on instead of tuning out what was going on. And I love what you were saying about the margins. I'm probably going to start sharing that tomorrow. So last question, what advice can you share to those who, like what we were just talking about, kind of feel like maybe they're not being able to stay up to date, and not just even in technology, just all the information that's coming out with our standards and new curriculum and new textbooks, for those who maybe have some self-doubt,
Right.
Because that leads to teacher burnout.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly, I would reiterate the one thing, which is it is okay not to know everything. You can tell them Eric Curts gives you permission. He does not know everything. You do not have to know everything. It is okay to not always be up to date on everything and know the answer to everything. But that it's probably more important when you don't know the answer to things, how you handle that, that you can use it as a wonderful modeling opportunity to show your students a growth mindset, to say, look, I'm not done learning. How can we figure this out? Let's think. What can we do to solve this? How can we figure this out? And that's the sort of example that, first of all, is great for our students, but it's also the type of learning experience and environment they need most. When Google, and you know this because we know each other because of applied digital skills to begin with, when Google was first using their Grow with Google program to try to figure out how can we help people get jobs and be successful in the workforce. And that all led to applied digital skills, blah, 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 blah. They contracted with, trying to remember which group it was now, the Economists group or whatever. And they did that big survey of like all these Fortune 500 companies. And they were like, hey, what skills do you need new graduates to have as they're coming in? And the number one skill by far was problem solving. It was, can they look at a situation that's not clearly defined and step back and go, well, let's poke a stick at this and try to figure it out. And let's see what's a possible solution. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's try something else. And, that's good that we model that for our students. And if we don't know the answer, say, okay, guys, so how do we figure it out? What can we do to figure this out? And, there is no clear-cut ABC 1, 2, 3 all the time for things. I mean, in real life, there never is. And school, so often there is. In school, so often there's an expected answer. There's, this is the right answer. Well, hey, our shortcomings and the things that we don't know are a good chance to show students that's okay, but also to show them how we can problem solve.
Thank you so much, Eric, for joining me tonight. Thank you so much for all of you who have listened to the Facing Your Fears podcast. If you like my show and would like to know more, please follow me on Twitter. My handle is @Alford_science. You'll find all my podcasts on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. Please leave me a review and make sure to subscribe to my podcast. Join me next Sunday for the newest episode of Facing Your Fears. And as the great Red Green always used to say, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together. See you next week.